Hi Year 9, welcome to the options video to introduce you to Edexcel History GCSE. Okay, so Edexcel is the exam board, and later on in the PowerPoint there are links to the exam board website so you can have a further look if you've got any initial questions. History is a really valuable qualification. The reasons are twofold. So first of all, you gain knowledge and an insight into the world. So we know that work, world and wellness is the foundation of our curriculum, and like it says here, you understand how our world comes into being. Okay, so what developments have happened, key events, different societies in national and world history, and it will help you to understand your place in the world and how the things that you value, like democracy and government and monarchy and your life as you know it, has come into being. Okay, but also the second part of the course are the skills that you will learn along the way. So absolutely we are promoting independent learning, but you will become critical, so you'll learn how to engage in sources and historical documents, which is absolutely vital in today's world when we have fake news and we live in a world of social media. So you can start to interpret the reliability of these things. And you are a reflective thinker, so you'll be looking at evidence and weighing up arguments for and against. Different statements, different ideas. So for example, was the main change in prisons, like you can see in the picture, the move towards a separate and silent system? Okay, were these prisons effective? You'll have to look at evidence and weigh up the arguments. Was Hitler, his personality, the main reason why the Nazis could take power in Germany? So is it down to Hitler? You'd look at evidence for that statement, but you might look at other factors and start to develop your own conclusions. So you absolutely will be practicing developing an argument using evidence. And those skills are crucial in other subjects, but also later on in life if you go on for further study, but also in any career path. Okay? So history is a valuable academic GCSE. First question I always get really is, do you have to work in a museum? No, the answer is no. So because of the skills that you gain from doing history GCSE, it actually opens up lots and lots of different career paths. So you can see there that the skills of analysis and research and communication could lead into something in the business sector or marketing. You might work in any of the public sector jobs, so the police, the judiciary. You could take up any post in law and further study that involves those skills. So it's not just about the history, it's about the skills that you develop as well. There are lots of subjects that you can go on to study later on in further education, and there are lots of subjects that sit really nicely with history. So obviously it's close to English, and the skills you pick up in history will help enforce the skills you do in English, but it sits alongside other subjects that you might encounter later on in the sixth form, for example, like sociology, psychology, economics, those kind of subjects. Okay, there's a clip on the slide. If you have a look, that gives you a bit more detail about the benefits of studying history, and hopefully you can spend a few minutes having a look at that and seeing what that has to say. The assessment in history is through 3 examinations at the end of the 2-year course. So you can see there some of the topics that we cover. I'll talk about them in a bit more detail in a moment. So you have paper 1, which is about crime and punishment from the year 1000 to present day. You have a section on there also about Whitechapel and policing in Whitechapel. You'll have heard of that at the start of year 9 when you did Jack the Ripper. You've got paper 2, which is Elizabeth I, her reign as queen, her early part of her reign, and then you've got American West, which is America in 1830s to the 1890s. So talking about the Native Americans and the colonization by the white settlers. You've then got paper 3, which is Weimar and Nazi Germany. So that is Germany after the First World War, and it talks about the implications of the First World War and the Treaty of Versailles on Germany and how the Nazis got into power. Various different skills. Paper 1 covers a bit of source work, a bit of explanation using historical evidence and evaluation. Paper 2 is more AO1 knowledge-based questions, and paper 3 is more source work and then looking at historical interpretations. So in a bit more detail then, paper 1, you explain, you examine and investigate the changes in crime and punishment over time. So all the way back to how the church used to govern crime and punishment. So, you know, trial by ordeal and allowing God to decide who was guilty and who was innocent. You've got a picture there of a donking of the witch, trial by water. You talk about how law was enforced before the police. So how did we catch criminals? How did we make sure people obeyed the law if there were no police? Because the police were only invented in 1829. We talk about law changes. So why did we start executing people for being witches in the 1500s? Why did we imprison people in the 1900s during the First World War for refusing to join the army? Because we wouldn't do that now. And we talk about punishments. So you can see there an early form of prison and how prisons have changed, and the death penalty, and why we no longer have the death penalty. So there's some of the key things that you'll be examining across that large time frame. And then the last picture there is supposed to highlight Jack the Ripper, because you also do a section on Whitechapel and what the policing and the social conditions were like in Whitechapel and how that led to the Ripper's crimes. Paper 2 is split into 2 different parts. The first topic is Elizabeth I, obviously daughter of Henry VIII. She faced lots of challenges when she came to the throne, the changing religion, how to please everyone, Catholics, Protestants, how to keep foreign powers on her side. So you examine those kind of things. And the second picture there is the Spanish Armada. And so we talk about how Elizabeth managed to defeat the Spanish and to create a society where there was exploration and wealth and towns were growing, and actually England prospered under her reign. The second section of paper 2 is the American West. So we talk about the lifestyle of the Native Americans. You can see a picture there, the third picture along. We talk about how they survived in really inhospitable circumstances in the west of America on the plains. And then we talk about how white settlers gradually eroded the Native American territories. So homesteaders, cowboys, that's where cowboys and Indians, you know, the films, the classic Western films come from, because there was conflict between the two groups. So we talk about how white settlers sort of really eradicated the Native American lifestyle. And then paper 3 is the aftermath of the First World War for Germany. Okay, so we've talked about the First World War lower down the school. You're very familiar with things like trench warfare, but then we start to talk about the effect it had on Germany, and after Germany had to accept the blame, we see people like Hitler disagreeing with the government in Germany. Okay, they didn't want to accept the blame. They didn't think the Treaty of Versailles was fair, and so extremist parties, namely like the Nazis, managed to gain power. So we're going to look at how Hitler comes to power, because he was actually voted in. He didn't seize power. He didn't take over illegally. He actually democratically, earned enough popularity to be voted into power in Germany. And then obviously we look a little bit about what life was like in Nazi Germany itself. So how he controlled the people and how he made sure people followed him and the Nazis. As I say, they measure different skills. So paper 1 is AO1 and AO2. So using historical knowledge to formulate an argument and to make judgments. Paper 2 is very similar. And then paper 3 is very much AO3 and 4. So source-based work, looking at the utility of sources and looking at different historians' points of view and which ones we can trust about, for example, the role of Hitler. So that's just an insight into the sorts of topics you will be studying if you opt for History GCSE. If you want any further information, the initial port of call is the website for the qualification, so the link is there. I could put lots of other websites on that have got bits and pieces, but to be honest, if you can't find an answer to your question on the specific Edexcel website, the best thing to do is to actually and I can answer any questions. So Mrs. Johnson and cjohnson@manor.school. And if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, because we would love to see you all studying history in the near future. Okay, thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you all when we're all back in school nice and safely. Thank you, bye.